It is election night on November 7th, 1876. The city of Springfield, Illinois, is fully alive tonight. Every salon is packed, every street corner is buzzing. The whole country is holding its breath as the votes come in from across the nation. Out here, nobody is thinking about Oak Ridge Cemetery. Nobody is thinking about what sits in the darkness behind those iron gates. Nobody except three men walking quietly through the night. They move without lanterns and make no noise. Their boots press softly against the cold ground as they approach the Lincoln Monument, a massive stone structure rising into the dark Illinois sky. Inside, behind a locked iron door, behind a marble sarcophagus, inside a lead-lined cedar coffin, lies the body of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, dead for 11 years, and tonight someone has come to take him. One of the men produces a file. He sets to work on the padlock. The scraping of metal against metal fills the silence. It takes half an hour, but eventually the lock gives. They push open the door, step inside, light a lantern, and there it is, the marble sarcophagus, sealed, heavy, sitting exactly where it has always been. They pry the lid open, and there is the coffin. They grab it and pull, but the thing weighs 500 pounds. It is stuffed with lead, and it barely moves. They manage to drag it 15 inches before one of them steps away, supposedly to fetch help. Outside the monument, hidden in the surrounding darkness, a team of Secret Service agents waits for the signal. They have revolvers drawn. They have been crouching in complete silence in their stocking feet for hours. The signal comes. They rush in. And what follows is one of the most humiliating moments in the history of American law enforcement. In the darkness, the agents collide with each other. Someone's gun goes off, a sharp crack of a pistol echoing off the marble walls. The commanding officer bursts through the door, strikes a match, and finds nothing. No criminals, just Lincoln's coffin, pulled halfway out of the stone vault, abandoned. The men who tried to steal a president have already walked out of the cemetery and vanished into the night. At this point, only one question matters. Who were these men, and what could possibly be worth risking a night inside Abraham Lincoln's tomb? They were not political radicals. They were not Confederate sympathizers. They were not war criminals seeking some twisted revenge. They were counterfeiters, currency forgers, small-time criminals running a printing operation out of Chicago. And the reason they were here, the reason they had their hands on Abraham Lincoln's coffin, goes back to something that happened on the very same day Lincoln was shot. The morning of April 14th, 1865, Lincoln signed a piece of legislation. In doing so, he created the agency that would one day be chasing criminals through his own cemetery in the dead of night. And it all begins 11 years earlier, in the final hours of the Civil War.
Before I tell you why we tried to steal the president, take a second to like and subscribe.
April 14th, 1865. The war is almost over. The Confederate Army is broken. The nation, battered, exhausted, bleeding, is beginning to breathe again. That morning, Abraham Lincoln signs a bill into law. It is not a military order. It is not a peace treaty. It is the creation of a small federal agency whose job is simple: to hunt down counterfeiters. This agency is called the United States Secret Service. In 1865, the country was drowning in fake money. Experts estimate that between 1/3 and 1/2 of all currency in circulation is counterfeit. The economy cannot function. People cannot trust the bills in their hands. Something has to be done. The Secret Service is the answer. That evening, Abraham Lincoln goes to the theater. He never comes home. The shot fired by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater on April 14th kills the president the following morning. And a nation that had just survived its worst crisis now finds itself in a grief it does not know what to do with. What follows is the most elaborate funeral in American history. Lincoln's body travels nearly 1,700 miles by train, retracing the very route he had taken to Washington 4 years earlier for his inauguration. The funeral train stops in city after city: Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, Chicago. At every stop, Lincoln lies in state while thousands of people file past in silence. In New York City alone, more than 150,000 people view the body. 500,000 line the streets to watch the procession pass. On May 4th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln is finally laid to rest at Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois. The Lincoln tomb is completed in 1874, a grand stone monument with a marble sarcophagus inside a burial chamber locked behind a steel gate. The coffin is placed inside, the door is locked, and Lincoln rests. Security at the tomb is minimal. Visitors walk through freely. The burial chamber is accessible. There are no permanent guards, no alarms, nothing. Ironically, the very agency created to hunt counterfeiters would soon find itself guarding the body of the president who authorized its creation. But not yet. Because for more than a decade, Lincoln will rest undisturbed until a criminal syndicate disturbed by the creation of the Secret Service and sitting hundreds of miles away wagered everything on the one thing no one imagined could be stolen. This is where it starts getting interesting. In the years after the Civil War, fake currency was still everywhere, and the best fake currency in the country is coming out of Illinois. A Chicago gang run by a man named James Kennally, known on the streets as Big Jim, operates one of the largest counterfeiting rings in the nation. They are not small time. They are printing enormous quantities of near-perfect fake bills and flooding them into the economy. Their operation is professional, organized, and profitable. The reason it is profitable is one man, Benjamin Boyd. Boyd is a master engraver, the very best in the business. His counterfeit plates are so precise, so detailed, that the bills they produce are almost impossible to tell from the real thing. He is the engine that runs the entire operation. Without his plates, there is no money. Without his money, there is no gang. In 1875, the Secret Service catches up with Benjamin Boyd. He is arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 10 years in the Illinois State Penitentiary at Joliet. The moment those prison doors close behind him, Big Jim Kennaly's empire begins to collapse. The plates are gone. The supply is drying up. Every week that Boyd sits in that cell, the operation loses money it cannot replace. Big Jim needs Boyd out. He needs him out badly, and he is willing to do something extraordinary to make it happen. You might be thinking he would bribe a guard, hire a lawyer, or even try to break him out. You'd be wrong. Big Jim is thinking bigger than that. Far bigger. He is thinking about something that no criminal in American history has ever attempted. His plan is this: steal Abraham Lincoln's body, hide it somewhere no one will find it, then send a message to the United States government. You want him back? Release Benjamin Boyd. Give us $200,000 in gold, and you get your president. $200,000 in today's money is somewhere close to $6 million. That's the amount Big Jim felt the president's coffin was worth. He sits back and considers the logic. And here is the thing: the logic is not completely insane. Illinois law in 1876 treated grave robbing as a minor offense. 1 year in county jail. That is it. The risk is low. The reward is enormous. And the tomb, Lincoln's tomb, has no guards, no alarms. Visitors walk through it every single day. The whole plan has one weakness. Kennally and his men are counterfeiters. They do not know the first thing about stealing a body, so they need help. The first attempt never even makes it to the cemetery. One of Kennaly's associates in Logan County, flush with whiskey and loose with his mouth, drinks too much one night and tells a woman about the plan. She tells others. Within hours, the story is spreading through town. The gang panics and flees. Big Jim moves his operation to Chicago and starts again. This time, he is more careful. At his saloon on the south side of Chicago, a place called The Hub, he begins putting together a new crew. He recruits a bartender named Terrence Mullen and a petty criminal named Jack Hughes. But they still need someone who knows how to actually remove a body from a tomb. That is when Louis Swiegels walks in. Swiegels is charming, confident. He sits at the bar and tells anyone who will listen that he is the best body snatcher in Chicago. He has stories. He has credentials. He seems to know exactly what he is talking about. Mullen and Hughes are impressed. They bring him in. What Big Jim does not know, what none of them know, is that Louis Swiegels is working for the United States Secret Service. Patrick D. Terrell is the head of the Secret Service office in Chicago. He has been watching the Kennally gang for months, and when Swiegels comes to him with details about a plot to steal Lincoln's body, Terrell does not believe it at first. Then he reads the details again. He sends a telegram to Washington. He calls it a matter of national importance. He calls it a damnable act. Washington agrees. This cannot be allowed to happen. But here is the problem. If the Secret Service moves too early, if they arrest the gang before the robbery attempt, the charges will be minimal. There is no specific law against planning to steal a body. Without catching them in the act, the whole case falls apart. Terrell makes a decision. They will let the plan proceed. They will be inside the cemetery when it happens. They will catch Mullen and Hughes with their hands on Lincoln's coffin. He travels to meet with Robert Todd Lincoln, the president's only surviving son. He explains everything. The plan, the gang, the ransom demand. Robert Lincoln is a careful private man who has spent his entire adult life trying to protect his father's legacy. He does not like this, but he agrees. Let it happen. Catch them. Terrell recruits Secret Service agents, Pinkerton detectives, and local police. He makes contact with John Carroll Power, the custodian of Lincoln's tomb, who agrees to help with the stakeout. November 7th, 1876 is the date the gang has chosen. Election night. The presidential race between Rutherford Hayes and Samuel Tilden, one of the most contested elections in American history. The whole country will be watching the results. Springfield will be distracted. The cemetery will be empty. Terrell and his men take an overnight train from Chicago to Springfield on November 6th. They arrive at the cemetery. They remove their boots and settle into the darkness of the monument to wait. The trap is set. On the night of November 7th, 1876, Mullen, Hughes, and Swiegels walk through the dark streets toward Oak Ridge Cemetery. They are carrying a carpet bag full of tools. Their plan is clean. Open the tomb, pull out the coffin, load it on a wagon driven by their fourth man, William Neely, and drive north through the night. What they do not know is that William Neely is also a government informant. Half of the robbery crew is working for the Secret Service. They reach the cemetery. The Lincoln Monument rises above them in the dark, massive, quiet, unmistakable. They move to the iron door of the burial chamber. Mullen produces a hacksaw and goes to work on the padlock. The blade snaps almost immediately. He switches to a file. Hughes takes turns. For 30 minutes, they scrape and grind in the darkness. The lock falls apart. They push the door open and step inside. Inside the marble burial chamber, Swiegels lights a lantern. The warm glow falls across the room, and there, in the center, sits the marble sarcophagus. They pry the lid open, and inside they find the sealed, lead-lined cedar coffin of Abraham Lincoln. They grab it and pull. The thing does not move. It weighs 500 pounds, and it is not going anywhere without a fight. They strain and push and drag until they get it 15 inches out of the vault. That is all. They cannot lift it. They need another man. Mullen tells Swiggles to go get Neely and the wagon. Swiggles steps outside into the cool night air. He gives the signal. The agents move. What happens next is the part that nobody in the Secret Service wants to talk about. The officers rush toward the monument in the darkness. One of them, George Hay, allows his pistol to discharge. The crack of the gunshot tears through the cemetery silence. Tyrrell bursts through the door and strikes a match. The room is empty. Lincoln's coffin sits half out of the vault, but Mullen and Hughes are gone. Outside, Tyrrell spots a dark figure behind a tree and fires. The figure fires back. Tyrrell fires again. The figure fires twice more. "Chief, we have the devils up here," Tyrrell shouts. "Tyrrell, is that you?" the figure calls back. It is John McGinn of the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The two men have been shooting at each other in the dark. Mullen and Hughes walk out of the east gate of the cemetery and disappear into the night. The attempted theft of Abraham Lincoln's body ends not in a dramatic arrest, but in two federal agents firing at each other while the criminals go home. Louis Swiggles keeps working. He feeds information back to Tyrrell. He helps track Mullen and Hughes as they make their way back to Chicago. 10 days after the robbery, the two men are arrested at the Hub Saloon. The trial begins in May of 1877. And here is where the law shows exactly how unprepared it is for what just happened. Illinois has no law against stealing a corpse. There is no charge that fits. Prosecutors are forced to charge Mullen and Hughes with conspiracy to commit an unlawful act and with attempting to steal Lincoln's coffin. Not the body, the coffin. A wooden box valued at $75. They are convicted, sentenced to 1 year each at Joliet State Penitentiary. 1 year for attempting to steal the body of a martyred president and hold it for $6 million in ransom. Big Jim Kennally, the mastermind, the man who designed the entire plot, is never formally connected to the tomb robbery. He spends time in prison over the following years on counterfeiting charges. But for the Lincoln scheme, he walks. He fades from history like smoke. 3 years later, the Illinois legislature quietly revised its law on grave robbing. The new penalty is up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. Nobody publicly explains why the law was changed. The government keeps the whole story quiet. They are terrified that too much publicity will inspire someone else to try it again. And what about Lincoln? John Carroll Power, the tomb custodian, cannot sleep. He knows how close it came. He knows the marble sarcophagus is not enough. He knows the tomb is not secure. So he makes a decision, without telling the government, without official authorization, and does something that would have been considered deeply undignified if anyone had known. He secretly moves Lincoln's coffin to the basement. While visitors upstairs pray in front of the empty sarcophagus, believing Lincoln's remains are sealed inside, the actual coffin sits in a damp basement below the monument, hidden under a pile of scrap lumber. It stays there for 2 years. When Mary Todd Lincoln died in 1882, her coffin was quietly buried beside her husband's in the same damp basement. The Lincoln Guard of Honor, a small group of trusted men who know the secret, piled debris over both graves to hide them. For years, tourists visit the Lincoln Monument. They stand before the marble sarcophagus. They bow their heads. They pay their respects. They have no idea that the coffin they are honoring is empty. In 1887, Lincoln and his wife were finally moved out of the basement and placed in a more secure below-ground grave within the tomb structure. And at that point, the coffin is opened for the first time since the funeral to confirm he is still inside. He is. Then in 1900, the entire monument is dismantled. The foundation is failing. The obelisk is coming down. Lincoln has to move again. And again. In 1901, 36 years after the assassination, Robert Todd Lincoln finally puts an end to it. He orders his father's coffin placed inside a steel cage, lowered 10 feet into the earth, and encased in 2 tons of concrete. But before the concrete is poured, one final thing happens. A small group of witnesses insists on opening the coffin. They need to see for themselves after everything. After 17 moves and 5 openings and 1 near theft and years in a basement under a lumber pile, that Abraham Lincoln is actually in there. They cut a small hole in the lid. 22 people look inside. Lincoln is perfectly recognizable. His face is gold-toned from old bruises, his hair, his beard, his mole, all preserved. His suit is covered in yellow mold. His gloves have rotted on his hands. On his chest, a few faded red threads, the last remnants of the American flag he was buried with. They seal the coffin, weld it shut, lower it into the cage, pour the concrete, and that is where Abraham Lincoln has stayed ever since. Today, you can walk through the Lincoln Tomb at Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois. Free admission. Open daily. You can stand in the burial chamber and look at the granite marker on the floor where Lincoln lies beneath 10 feet of steel and concrete. The same tomb that a group of counterfeiters nearly looted on a November night in 1876. The same tomb that the Secret Service sprinted through in their stocking feet. The same place where an agent fired at a Pinkerton detective in the dark while the actual criminals walked quietly out the east gate. Abraham Lincoln's body was moved 17 times, his coffin was opened 5 times, and the agency he created on the morning he was shot was the one running through the cemetery in the middle of the night to protect him.
We couldn't get Lincoln, but you can still like and subscribe. Cheers.